Welcome to another episode of the Man Shreks. I am Sarah.
And I'm JJ.
Welcome.
We're trying so hard not to say host. No, but this is that place where we go to get away from all the things that have a point. We take a break and we tell goofy stories, play games, and sometimes get into articles that make us angry.
Oh, don't give it all away.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, but before we get to anything that's like even remotely like substantive, let's do a bunch of nonsense. Are you ready to approach the news desk?
Yes. Okay. All right, so my first story is watermelon snow piques curiosities in Utah after an abnormally wet winter. You want to know what watermelon snow is?
Let me guess at what watermelon snow is. Is it like a snow cone flavor at like a local shop or something?
No, it's actual snow falling into the mountains.
What?
With hues of pinks, purples, and oranges.
Oh, so it is snow coming out of the sky that is not white.
Yes. So it's been likened by certain groups to colors of flavored snow cones, flamin' hot Cheetos, pink lemonade, and dissolved blood. It's almost like it's been sprinkled with Himalayan salt or Kool-Aid powder, said one hiker with friends. So this is happening in Utah.
Wow.
So apparently when you scrape it, you can tell it's just on the surface. So people are hiking kind of high up in the mountain passes. And what happened is last winter, the record snowfall is heating up under the sunlight, and then it turns hues of red. So they're calling it watermelon snow because it's pinkish tint. However, it appears in high altitude environments throughout the globe, including the French Alps and Japan's mountains of Dua, when a perfect storm of conditions, water content, sunlight, temperatures, and dormant green algae called Chlamydomonas nivalis, and it thrives in cold temperatures.
So it's the stuff that the snow lands on.
Yes.
Colors.
So apparently the algae swims to the surface of the snow and then blooms and divides and spreads over. But when it's hit by the sun and the ultraviolet rays, it changes the color to protect itself from damage. So it turns the snow pink.
Algae all up
that
in the
blooms.
Snow.
It's apparently because it's really, really wet. And so they've had an unusually wet winter, but there's still snow up high in the mountains. And so that algae is like blooming, and then it just goes to the surface, and then the sun changes. It kind of reminds me of the way remember when we made that lemonade, that violet lemonade, and then when I added we soak the violet tea, and then we add the lemons, and it's purple when you soak the violets, but then when you add the lemon, it changes it to pink because of the acidity of the lemons. Yeah. Or the whatever it is in the lemon.
So this is something that's been going on probably for a long time. We just never heard of it. It
happens all over the world, apparently. But it has to be like just the right conditions. Like all of these factors have to be present for it to turn pink.
That's so cool. You know, like in like Avatar, Way of the Water or whatever, and or any of those kind of movies where it's like, look at this amazing alien planet, and it's like cool colors and stuff, and it's like a lot of that. I'm not saying it's realistic, right? Obviously, they're doing it like neon or whatever for movies, but a lot of that kind of stuff does exist on our planet. Our planet is so cool. It is so cool.
But the biggest question people are wondering is, can they eat the pink snow?
Ew.
The answer is technically yes, because it's not harmful to ingest. However, it's not recommended because it's often found in melting snowbanks with a lot of dirt and dust.
It tastes like seaweed. Yeah, that's not going to be yummy. Because it's not snow. It's the algae in the snow. Like, you don't want to eat that. Yeah. Ugh.
It's so interesting.
It's like moldy snow. That's what this is.
It's just, it can affect different areas depending on ecosystems and the species that rely on the water and all sorts of stuff. I just thought that was so interesting because I've never heard of this before, but apparently it's happening right now in Utah because of,
amazing,
a really wet winter that was melting into.
I'm not going to lie to you. If I saw snow that was pink in hue, I would freak out. And there's no way I would come up with something as innocent as algae. Like, I would be like, someone was murdered here.
Oh, yeah, that's what it said. I mean? Someone thought, it looked like blood or red food coloring. Just so bizarre. So, anyway.
I don't know. Snow is supposed to be white, and all other snow should be avoided. Right?
Don't eat yellow snow.
We all know this, right? Yeah. All right, Lansing man. I love this because it's a Michigan article. Lansing man hits karaoke milestone by singing 3,000 different songs.
What, in a row?
No. Over the course of whatever.
Over the course of his time.
Yes, in his karaoke career.
What an
in
aspiration.
karaoke bars. Some people are more eager to sing than others. For one Lansing man, his passion for karaoke has led him to reach a remarkable milestone. It was a slow news day over at the whatever this is, WKAR, a century of service. Those who attend community musical theater performance in Lansing have probably seen Gordon Clark. He's been in a couple dozen shows, usually in the background, but singing with gusto. Musical theater entered his life when he got a role in the Lansing production of Oliver back in 2001. So this is like a theater guy who loves to sing.
Is this Andy Bernard?
Basically, Gordon Clark, real life Andy Bernard. One evening, a group of cast members went to a local karaoke night, because actually that is a super fun way to like hang out with people
and hang out with your
like an idiot.
theater friends. That's true.
So fun. Clark tagged along as a group. They sang Summer Nights from Greece, and he was
of course
hooked.
they did. I'm just imagining Parks and Rec where
Yes.
what's his face and
Jeremy. What's his name?
Oh my gosh, we watch that show all the time, and
Jeremy Jam.
You guys
Jam.
got Jam.
Yeah,
Jeremy
Jam.
and Leslie do Summer Nights. No, you play Zuko.
And he does the female the voice. Oh man. So he became a familiar face in both the theater and the karaoke scenes ever since then, with most folks just calling him Gordo. Over time, he noticed that while many people had a handful of go-to songs, he liked to try new material, which I think is valid. I think people who do karaoke a lot, they all have like...
Their signature song.
Yeah, there's like 5 that they're like, yes, this is my thing.
It's usually totally close to the heart.
I thought, well, maybe I know more songs than the average person. Wouldn't it be fun to just kind of write them down? And so the first time he took a pen to paper, he came up with about 100 to 120 different ones that he had done. And that was the germ. That was my first list. The list has grown over the years, and a couple months ago, he announced to his friends that he would celebrate his 68th birthday by singing his 3,000th different title.
68 years old. This is so cute.
Right?
He's like an old man.
A little old man who loves
not
theater.
Actually, that old.
No, it's not. But I mean, he might be retired, but he's just chilling, and he's like in the theater. But he's been doing it for 20 years. So he started like in his 40s, and he was just like, I'm gonna do this. With a list that long, coming up with new songs became challenging. The task has been aided by online music streaming services and mobile trivia games that he plays called Song Pop. Music has always been a part of his life. My mother was a performer, my father was a performer, my dad was a performer, and so it was just natural that I was going to be on stage someday. Now sing along with me, y'all.
You're from Lansing, don't say y'all.
Yeah. So funny. Song number 3,000 was Thank You for the Music by ABBA.
Wow.
Glasses were raised, Gordo's friends sang along, and afterward there were hugs and even a few tears. Which is just, I mean, that's a little over the top, but I love it.
Wow, that's so special. Good job, Gordo.
Oh my gosh. The lyric... it's such a goofy thing. With number 3,000 in the books, Clark says he'll keep singing, though he feels less of a need to add new titles to his list. I have a lot of old material that I either
recycle.
sing well or love to sing again, or I was so bad the first time I want to make it right the next time. So I have a lot to do coming up. And after all, there's always 3001.
Dream big, man. Dream big.
Woo, 3,000 songs. It's totally true. I've only done karaoke like twice in my life. Like,
yeah, me too.
You used to do it, didn't you? Like with down in Chinatown when we used to live there.
I went once.
Oh, is it really just the one time?
Once.
Oh,
they dropped me off at this really shady looking bar, and there were
remember.
Independent room. Like it was like go into this room with like a bench and a TV, and there were like 6 karaoke microphones, and it was literally like private karaoke rooms. It was really weird, and I only went once.
You went with coworkers.
I did. We went with coworkers.
Yep.
There was like 4 or 5 of us.
I remember dropping you off, and I was uncomfortable.
It felt super shady.
I
remember going inside, and I was like, "Where do I go?" And it was like there were like 3 people at the
darkened
bar, and this guy was just
windows
like, "What are you here for?" And I was like, "Karaoke." And he's like, "This first room." And I was like, what happens when I open the door? And I never went back. But I have gone to karaoke like with friends like in college.
Yeah,
like, we would
that's
go to,
when
like,
I was doing it.
Like I remember I went one time to Applebee's. Like they did like a karaoke night at Applebee's. I remember because it was when I was living with Gwen.
Yep.
And Gwen went too.
Nice.
Now, she was a 60-some-year-old woman.
Professional opera singer.
Opera.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's
she sang
clarify.
at the Met, the Metropolitan Opera of New York. And she was like, "We should sing a song together, Sarah and I." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It was bless her heart, it was so much fun, but it was also really weird because I was like this, early 20s college student. She's like the 60-year-old woman. We're singing karaoke together.
I feel like so far this episode has been a study in the uncomfortable laughs of Sarah.
I'm sorry. It actually wasn't that uncomfortable. It was actually a really fun experience because the next time we did karaoke, I like went to this weird bar with a bunch of people my sister was graduating with, and I had already graduated, and they were getting ready to graduate. And there used to be this tiny little dive bar that we'd pass by in 20th Street all the time.
This is what I was remembering.
And
I thought you'd gone there a bunch of times.
Literally, like, you open the door and the bar is like right there. I think there were like 4 tables in the whole place, and we always used to pass by it and we were like, DJ's bar, DJ's bar. It looks so janky. Like the sign looks like it was made in the 50s.
Yeah.
Like, it was like this tiny hole in the wall, and we always joked because they had on their sign every single
karaoke.
time we passed karaoke, like Wednesday or Thursday or something.
Yep.
We were like, someday we're gonna go at 9. So one day we just drove by and we were like, let's go to karaoke night. And literally there were like 8 of us in our group, and I think we filled up the whole bar. Like they were like, who are these college kids? And we did karaoke night, and we absolutely sang Summer Nights from Grease.
Summer Nights. See, here's the thing. I've only done karaoke twice, and the first time I ever did it, I completely misunderstood the function of karaoke. I thought it was to display your impressive skills. So I was trying to pick...
For some people it is.
And well, but that's like... I feel like that's doing karaoke wrong, right? Because I remember...
Why do you think they offer karaoke at bars where everyone's drinking?
Yeah, like it's supposed to be dumb and fun, and you're supposed to sing loud and off key and have a good time, and people are supposed to sing with you. And I think those who get too much into the performance, like I did the first time I did it, I was like, I got to pick a song that I can actually, know all the words, and I do it really well, and I'll do a good job. And it's like, yeah, that's not what your people are there for. People are there to goof off and enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have such a performative mindset, and it's like, no, you got to let go of that. Like, stop trying to fit that image. Just have fun.
It was just a fun thing. My story?
Yeah.
All right. So my next story, my second story is robot takes podium as an orchestra conductor in Seoul.
Ooh, no.
An android robot, Eve R6, took the conductor's podium in Seoul this past Friday to lead a performance by South Korea's National Orchestra, marking the first attempt in the country. It's a 2-armed robot designed by the Korea Institute of Industrial Technology, and it made its debut at the National Theater of Korea, leading musicians in the country's national orchestra.
Wow, I thought it would take a lot longer before robots got into stuff like the arts. I expected them to get into like data, processing and whatnot, to take up like boring office jobs, but it's
like a humanoid-looking robot.
Wow, does it look cool?
I mean,
oh no, it looks creepy.
It does kind of look creepy, but it has to have like it has like a humanoid face that says. It started waving its arms to control the tempo of the live show. The movements by the conductor are very detailed. Who led, says this, another conductor who led alongside the robot. So they have like a backup just in case.
Just in case, yep.
So the robot was able to present such detailed moves much better than I had imagined. But the critical weakness is that it cannot listen.
I was just wondering, because I'm thinking they programmed the thing to wave its arms in tempo with the music, but it can't adjust to a live performance.
Yep, it's exactly what it says. It says the robot's moves, though impeccable in keeping the rhythm, lacked breath or the ability to keep the orchestra ready to engage collectively and instantly, which is essential in performance.
I'll tell you, I really let go of my kind of classical upbringings because I played in middle school and high school in symphony band, symphony orchestra, and marching band and all that. And there is the conductor's work is so much more than just waving the stick to the tempo. We had a phenomenal conductor, Mr. McCoy. Shout out. I'm certain he's not listening to this podcast,
is
but
he still alive?
Yeah, he was kind of a younger guy.
Okay.
Probably a little bit younger than our parents, I would imagine.
Okay.
Great guy though, and he was so expressive and so good at what he did. But the big thing was, if there's an instrument section that's being too loud, one hand is conducting, the other hand is controlling volumes. Does that make sense? He's like, I want more from over here, or I want less from over here. And it, you know what I mean? The expressiveness of a conductor goes far beyond just waving your arms robotically. Yep. And so it's still a little freaky because I'm guessing they're not that far off from adding ears to this thing and the ability to say, oh, no, that's not good.
Yeah, to like sense that something.
Have the robot
it says
respond
audience members said that the performance appeared to be at an elementary level. I guess it would be able to do the conducting all by itself when it's equipped with artificial intelligence to understand and analyze the music. That makes sense.
I feel like that would be very advanced because to be able to analyze and turn it around that quickly, that takes a lot. I think it's impressive for humans to do it. You know?
I agree.
But I don't know. That's cool /
It's cool,
terrifying.
but yeah, it's interesting.
Be polite to your little Google Assistant because they will overthrow us very soon.
It is the Terminator.
The Terminator. All right. This story, it's actually kind of sad, but it's a little bit funny, okay? New York gunman kills apartment resident, flees, trips over his drooping trousers, and accidentally shoots himself and then dies.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
It's such like it's a comedy of errors in a really tragic
It's a dark
way,
comedy.
right? Yeah. Okay. So it's like a 28-year-old Bronx man. He shot and killed a 32-year-old man that he had been having an argument with over drugs. So they're arguing over drugs, and he shoots the 32-year-old man. The 32-year-old man's roommate pokes his head out, and the guy who did the shooting, shot one bullet at the second guy, which it grazed his cheek, and then the gunman runs away. He's like, "Oh no, there's a witness," and he runs. It took a pot shot at him, grazed his cheek. The suspect fled, and then the suspect's drooping trousers tangled around his legs in the stairwell. With his finger still on the trigger, he fell. The weapon discharged, shooting him fatally.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't really know that saggy pants were still a thing. Like,
didn't either.
I thought we'd kind of gotten away from
Apparently
that.
they're fatal.
Yeah, not a good idea if you're gonna be shooting
Oh my
people.
gosh,
make
that's
sure you
so
got your
awful.
skinny jeans on. It was
Please
a
don't.
murder / accidental suicide, a police source said.
Oh
A man,
my
he shoots the guy, runs down the stairs, trips, and shoots himself.
Oh boy. That
And
was just a bad decision.
the
right
article
there.
says, "This is why we know why the old men gangsters wear their pants so high."
Yep. And a belt. Necessary precautions.
But that's the whole story. But I just thought
Oh
it was
my God.
insane.
That's crazy.
Like, whoops.
And case closed.
Yeah, I mean, oof, boy. So don't shoot your neighbor and
Try to run away with your pants around
Yep.
your ankles. That sounds bad.
belts, saving lives everywhere.
Seriously. Oh my god.
Isn't that just terrible? It was just so bizarre, a little bit funny, but really kind of sad.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to bring you down. Are you ready for Sponsor Your Life?
Yeah. So this past week, our kids went to Vacation Bible School. It was a lot of fun. It was exhausting. I was able to sneak away only a little bit for one of the days. I was a permanent accessory in the classroom most of the time, so I wasn't actually even helping at VBS. I was not assigned a helper. I was literally a parent dropping off who was no longer allowed to leave because my kids decided they were too nervous to stay. So,
well, Ezra, I would say he's on the younger end.
He was on the younger end of that. He was literally one of two. One little boy only showed up like 2 out of the 4 days.
Yeah.
Who was also 3.
Yeah.
Everybody else was at least 4 or older.
Yeah, I think that's normal. I think 3 is too young for that kind of program, unless
especially if it's 6:30 to 8:30 at night. That was a late night for the kids,
Yes.
but it was fun. They had a good time Monday through Thursday. We were there. I liked that the church offered dinner first because that was a nice family dinner, and then went to VBS after. So
yeah, I got to teach the middle schoolers and the high schoolers. That was really fun, actually. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of work, but it was great. Yeah. And like you said, 8:30. It's right on the edge of, it's a lot of sugar and a lot of stimulation and
yeah, there's a lot of like overload, and then a 15.5-minute car ride home after, leaving, where you're like, yay, overload, input, and overstimulation. And then all of a sudden it's like quiet car ride. And then it's like, oh, it's bedtime and it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And you're 2 hours past bedtime and everybody's melting down. But it was still fun. We had a good time.
And a couple of the nights it actually went well, but we just kind of walked the razor edge of like, is it going to be a meltdown or is it going to go smooth? And a couple times it did go smooth. It was totally fine.
It was.
And then other nights it was not.
But it was still fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, it was solid.
Good VBS. So
Nice.
How about you?
Sponsor my life this week. Okay, so as we've talked about this a ton on this podcast. We have a 6-year-old who is reading every book that has been written on the planet, and I love that.
He's actually 7 now.
Oh, he is 7. You're right. You're right.
7 a couple weeks ago.
Well, so he's reading so much, and we're really throwing up the ideas of like, okay, what's appropriate for him, because he's a very advanced reader, but he's also very young, and I don't want him to be exposed to certain things too early or before he's ready. Like all the different books from my childhood and remember this series or this series, and then kind of trying to remember like, okay, but how scary is that? Or how much fun is that? Or, you know, how much can a 7-year-old handle, you know? Yeah. He's read the Narnia books. We've read through The Hobbit together. There's a lot that he's done.
He has, yeah.
But I want to give a shout out to one of my childhood favorites because I was exploring some of the books that I'd read when I was a kid, and I remembered Bruce Coville. For those who don't know, Bruce Coville, he's the author of a ton of different books, primarily like written in the like early 90s, maybe into the 2000s a little bit. He has a whole bunch of series, a lot of sci-fi, but very like child-friendly sci-fi. So, for example, one of my favorite series was I Was a Sixth Grade Alien. And it's basically what if the foreign exchange student in your 6th grade class was from another planet? And there's like a little boy who's the son of the alien ambassador to Earth, who is just going to a regular school and meets the little boy, and they become best friends. And it's like super fun and cute. There's another one, Aliens Ate My Homework, and there's that's a whole series of books. Okay. And yeah, it's just fun, goofy, lighthearted sci-fi stuff. And I hadn't really thought about it in a long time. I'm a little bummed I'm missing some of the books. I used to have more of them, but I can only find some of them.
We have so many boxes of books still packed. It's possible they're in one of those boxes.
But I was just jazzed about it, and it was reminding me. You ever do that? Like you're like, oh yeah, that series. I didn't even remember that. And so I was having a good time, just kind of nostalgia of scrolling through. Oh, remember all these books? And then there's a whole bunch I never even heard of that he'd written. So there's more out there. But
very cool. You'll have to read them sometime.
Yeah, someday I'll just sit down and read some elementary ed, sci-fi books.
Elementary age sci-fi books. That's about your speed.
Yeah, Bruce Coville, definitely sponsoring my life and my child's reading list today.
Nice.
All right, so we'll just insert title here. We don't have a good title for it. But basically, every now and then I stumble across an article I think is really interesting. I think we should talk about it. It's not usually, we are not a content-heavy podcast. We just like to goof off and tell stories and play games. But every now and then we think it's worth talking about something. A couple weeks ago, what did we talk about? We did the Father's Day thing.
We talked about the the nuclear family. And
that's right. I thought that was really fascinating.
That was an interesting topic.
That was fun. So we thought we'd come in with some more. So today we're talking about homeschooling and public schooling. And there were a couple of articles that were out there that piqued our interest. And so, I don't know, do you want me to prep it and then
Why don't you
dive
just go
in?
ahead and dive in?
Okay, so there were 2 articles that we looked at. David French, who's this brilliant columnist, Christian guy, writes for the New York Times. He's an opinion columnist, and he's really, really smart. He's also a podcast host of 2 of my favorite podcasts. So, yeah, he's a really, really good guy. And he put out an article reviewing Shiny Happy People, which was the documentary, I believe it's on Amazon, about the Duggar family, which that's a whole thing. And the Duggar family they had a reality TV show called 19 and Counting. I have, never seen the show ever.
I've actually never
no connection to that world at all. But they followed the teachings of a guy named Bill Gothard. And it was not just homeschooling, but like homeschooling in a really rigid, fundamentalist, strict way. And then there was this other article from the Washington Post that someone shared with me recently. What was the title of it? It was like Revolt of the Christian Homeschoolers.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the Revolt of the Christian Homeschoolers.
Yeah, Revolt of the Christian Homeschoolers, which was a story of some Christian homeschool parents who were raised as homeschoolers but then decided to put their children into the public schools recently, and how that felt like a betrayal of what they grew up with. And that was really interesting. And so it touches on a lot of themes because this is something that's a big part of our lives. We currently homeschool our children. I was raised in the public school. You were homeschooled. I have a love of the public school systems, but I also think that there's a lot of problems with that system. And so, that's the premise. Go.
So to just preface, I have not actually seen the documentary Shiny Happy People.
No, me neither.
So I've read a lot about it, and I've read a lot of, discussions about it, different articles and different people's opinion articles and whatnot. And obviously this article, as well. So I have not seen it, but, it's pretty damning. But it's also the documentary itself is is presented from secular people who very clearly have an agenda. And I'm not discounting the fact that the things in the documentary are untrue or that they're not horrific to a degree. I think they're.
I was very surprised though the amount of people when that documentary first came out. I didn't have much interest because I had no connection to that world. I wasn't homeschooled. I don't know that many people who were homeschooled.
I knew a few people who were in that vein. Not significantly. Where I grew up in West Michigan, it was very conservative Christian in the CRC church, but not in the fundamental Baptist denomination, which is
it's very different.
I would say that the CRC church that I grew up in was quite legalistic, but not to the degree that this, like the IBLP or whatever it is with Bill Gothard, that whole vein of really fundamental Baptist is. I would say that's significantly more legalistic, where they would just iron out everything, every single detail down to like a followable rule that you had to, adhere to, or else you were, going to hell or whatever. So I had a little bit of a hard time relating to that. And I knew people who were connected to stuff like that, but myself personally, I was not.
And I hadn't seen the TV show. I had heard that guy had gotten in trouble. There was a big scandal, but I was very detached from it.
It was all kind of fringe.
Yeah, so I didn't pay too much attention to it, and that's why I didn't really feel a desire to watch the documentary because I didn't really. I don't know. I don't have too much interest.
I was going to dive into something else that was just going to make me sad and depressed about the way the world views Christianity, because now it's just another, this is why those Christians are terrible and all this stuff. And it's like, we don't need more fodder for that, because this is a very exclusive cult people.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm very comfortable agreeing with people who are horrified. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, look how horrible it is. And I was like, yes, me as a Christian man, also very horrified by this. Like I am not gonna be out there defending the Duggards or Gothard or any. I have no attachment to these guys. I just don't. I'm also horrified, you know. And so one thing I did appreciate, so the David French angle, what he really talked about was, first he talked about how more mainstream it was. Using words like cult to describe it is kind of shuttering it to the side to make it sound more fringe, but it's actually deep roots. And I think that even if you don't follow that group, the ripples of the legalism, I think, but what he really tapped into it that I appreciated from the David French article was that most of it is a pursuit of certainty. As parents, we want our children to turn out good, right? And that can mean different. We
want the perfect formula.
Yeah, everybody is looking for, what thing do I do to make sure my kids turn out good? And I think we all have slightly different definitions of what good is. Sometimes it's that we really want them to be successful. We want them to be emotionally developed. We want them to be happy and content in their lives, not be riddled with anxiety or depression. We want them to develop correctly, physically and mentally. And we want them to have as many opportunities as possible. And I don't know, I just feel like so many parents have the same goal, but we all are trying to get there in slightly different ways. Yeah. But there is a pursuit. And I think like people like Bill Gothard, especially when you slap the label God on it, it's like, this is God's way. So this is the divine, perfect, anointed way to raise your children. And that gives people honestly a real comfort to just lean on, well, and at least I know I'm doing it right. Yeah. But I think there's a double-edged sword to that, right? It's like, yeah, you're doing it God's way. So if your kid, it doesn't work, which it's not, like, children are as diverse as humans are because they're all humans.
They're free thinking.
Yeah. And so what works for one, like, there's just no cookie cutter formula that's going to work.
You can't push someone into a mold if it's not going to.
Yeah. And I totally respect the desire to raise your children well. I'm with you on that. But like, if you think this is God's way and it doesn't work for your kid, I mean, what are you going to think? Either that your kid is evil or something, or that you have failed in some way, and then it's like a moral failing instead of no, my kid just didn't respond to the things I tried. Or
so then the problem is you, and you didn't do it right.
And that fills you with guilt. Yep. And so I don't know. There is a pursuit of certainty. And certain places are offering that. And I think you do see that on the left as well. You see some more progressive things saying, if you do it this way, your kid is going to turn out amazing. You just have to be like super inclusive and super loving and super affirming of everything your kid does. And that will turn your kid out.
Yeah. It happens on both sides. It's not isolated to just one side or the other. Yeah,
but I think we're seeing really ugly fruit of the more conservative side. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about the Washington Post article. I'll link it in the notes. I think it's behind a paywall, so not everybody's going to be able to access it. But the revolt of Christian homeschoolers, I was bothered by it because for me, it was the exact opposite of our story. But I'm curious
Very much exact opposite.
What were your thoughts?
This article made me really mad because it's
I know, I just want to let you
a very
loose.
Specific audience, and it's very not even well hidden political agenda.
Yeah.
It's very clear. They're trying to like the most upsetting part. I'm just going to read just this little clip, this little bit from the end of the article, which really just was like, you're trying to make this seem like it's some like heroic thing, like people walking through the smoke at the end of a big explosion and we survived this. Like,
yep.
Okay. I get it. Some people come from really fundamental, really, intense upbringing, and maybe they, carry some trauma from it.
Sure.
Maybe they were, this article does mention a lot that in some Christian circles,
yep.
What would be considered child abuse because of, spare the rod, spoil the child type of mentality can cause problems. But the way this article ends
bad stuff in
is
there.
It's like Aaron and Christina, this couple that they follow through the story. This is the homeschool
that's
couple.
The premise, right?
They follow them and how they ended up deciding to send their kids to public school, even though they were themselves homeschooled. It says Aaron and Christina stood shoulder to shoulder surveying the classroom. This was the belly of the beast, the environment their parents had worked to save them from, but they weren't scared to be inside the school and were familiar with it. On Tuesday mornings, Christina volunteered here, helping Amy's class with reading lessons. Let's go out this way. The halls were long and wide with plenty of room for small legs to gather speed. It's like
this beautiful
they're
painted
trying to
picture. Yep.
It's like, look at how peaceful public school really is. Is your child really unsafe? And I feel like we just missed the whole, like, you're shooting through and you're shooting your agenda so far through. You didn't even stop to listen to what the other side is actually saying. We're not saying that public schools are like the belly of the beast. What we're saying is that there's some problems that are going on there that we need to address. And, it's true. Maybe sending the kids to school worked really well for this family. And that's great for them.
That's awesome.
And it's not like I'm going to sit here as someone who's homeschooling and be like, no, they're terrible people for changing their minds. You know what? That's their choice. They feel that that's the best thing they can do for their kids as parents. If they're, if they really would rather focus on their jobs, or they're not able to give the time that they feel, or they don't know what resources they have, or they don't have a good community to help them, teach their children, or they don't have resources that they need. All of these things factor into homeschooling. But I just felt like this article was very pointedly like, there was no information there. It was just an agenda, and they had to shove that in there, and they had to make you see why Christian homeschoolers are bad. And it was come on now.
Yeah, well, and I think so. There's a whole bunch of different angles to come at this from, but first I wanted to say so the Gothard thing and the Duggars, I feel like it's a very extreme thing, but it's also very flashy. It's very catchy. Mm-hmm. It's what comes to mind when people think about homeschooling. So it's easy to generalize. Yeah, and so I think that is in an existence, but I have never touched on that, right? The actual homeschool people I know, like you and your sister, and like
a large group of people that I mean, that was not my experience with homeschooling.
Well, and in the article they were talking about how this couple, they wanted to put their kids in school, and I was kind of freaked out. They talked about their homeschooling and how physical punishment, like what was it called, corporal punishment? Mm-hmm. Is that it? Yeah. Was a big part of their upbringing, and I was like, whoa. I don't know any homeschoolers who were treated like that.
No, that's like you said, that's a very specific sect of people who really hold to a very fundamentalist view of that type of family culture and family upbringing. And honestly, and it's like you're raising your kids in a Christian home. You can't just beat it in them and hope that they get it, because they're going to come out with all this trauma from abuse. Awful. But as a kid growing up, I would not say that my parents were like, oh, now it's time for the rod. You did disrespected and whack. I don't think my parents ever hit me with anything like that. No. That's insane. And I was a homeschool kid. Yep. My homeschool experience was very totally boring, mundane. Yeah. I mean, my mom would give us our workbooks. We had our workbooks. We're part of a
co-op or whatever.
Not a co-op. We did have a co-op. We attended art, and for a while we did other stuff with a co-op. We were part of a homeschool group, but for my graduation, I graduated with other homeschoolers in the West Michigan area, so we had that graduation ceremony. But we did a satellite school type of thing where they sent us the materials and they had curriculum we could choose from. Yep. And then we actually have a diploma from Christian Liberty Academy, which was a place in Chicago. Sure. And they provided homeschool resources for families, and then they would send you the tests and all of the standardized tests and everything. Yep. So that you could, make sure that they would keep your records for you too. For sure. So it was super helpful, but that was not my experience, where it was super fundamentalist and beating it into. I read a large array of stuff. Now, granted, it was Christian focused material, but it's not like I was, getting this super, super narrow-minded viewpoint. Yeah. I would say that I had a pretty limited but not super like sheltered view of things.
See, and I actually thought it was really interesting because they didn't touch on so the thrust of this article was kids who were raised in a scary Christian conservative environment where there's physical abuse, and that's what they were taught in the homeschooling, and you have to homeschool, otherwise you're a bad person.
Right.
And then they
tied
tried
to morality.
out, and then they tried out the public school, and turned out it wasn't as evil as they thought. And what I found in this article that was fascinating to me was that it's one extreme to the other extreme, and there's really no wiggle room in the middle for actually not everybody's like it on that side or on the other side.
There was no nuance. It was very clearly
I know some people who like the public school system. So I grew up public school educated, and I had a great time. The public school system is designed for people like me. I had a two-family home in a really stable situation. I'm a little bit I'm sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, 2-parent home. And I had a really stable situation. I had a lot of support, and I'm sort of a type A. So you give me an assignment, I do the assignment, and I respond really well to that. But I had people who pulled their kids out of the public schools because the public schools are a little bit cookie cutter. The curriculum is built for big classrooms that work for kids who fit in the mold. And if you don't fit in the mold, if you're neurodivergent or any kind of learning struggles, the public schools are not always able to accommodate that. And so there are people who, for no religious reason whatsoever, pull their kids and teach them at home because they can't sit in the classroom the way the other 30 kids can. So like public school worked really well for me. And I think it probably would work great for our kids because they are that kind of type A, very sort of simple. They don't have a lot of the neurodivergence or anything, but it just doesn't work for everyone. And to paint it as like, well, it's only this Christian, and not just Christian, but like evil Christian.
Yeah, we got to paint him as like they're the people beating their kids.
Yeah, Christian. And the fact is, I also am horrified by that stuff. Right? Yeah. Like when people are like, oh my gosh, can you believe what happened to Duggar? I, as a Christian person who is currently homeschooling my children, I also am horrified by that. Like you're not going to catch me defending the Duggars, right? Like this is terrifying. I had no idea that kind of stuff existed, right? Like, and I was really kind of freaked out by it when I heard the fringe stories, even not watching the documentary. And then like, the other piece of it was that my personal experience was the complete opposite. So it's been kind of fun being married to you because I grew up public school kid, and I thought homeschoolers are those weirdos, right? They probably get hit at home and they're super legalistic, fundamentalist, whatever. I had that perception. I was like, if I had to draw a picture of what homeschool kids were like, I probably would have come up with something like the Duggars, right? But as I got to know you and met other real people who were homeschooled, I was like, but you're so normal, and you're well educated, and you're a go-getter and a self-starter, and you are so good at the academics. When you and I took a class together in college, you got a better grade than I did, right?
It's interesting because it's like the two camps are set apart. It's like the Democrats versus Republicans. Like there can be no nuance. We as people love to have black and white. I need separation. There can be no gray area because then I can't choose who I like and who I don't like. And I think you are either pro public schools or pro homeschooling. There can be no nuance.
I think that's so silly. I remember when we were in the UP, there was a young lady who was in the church. She played piano with the choir. She was a homeschool kid, but she liked to do sports, and she was extremely talented. So she went and did sports over at the school. There was a co-op with the public school. Her parents wanted to raise her at home. Dad owned his own business or something, and they wanted the flexibility of scheduling so that they could leave the country on a whim or whatever. And they did a lot. She traveled a ton, but she always got her assignments done. But then she was able to like run cross country and be on the ski team, and it was like this, that's what worked for their family. And as I've come to know more about the homeschool world, I really appreciate how different it is from the cartoon caricatures that I've discovered. And honestly, growing up as a pastor's kid, I got similar vibes on that when people found out I was a pastor's kid. They're like, oh, you're one of those church kids? You're so normal for a church kid.
I hate that statement. I used to bristle so much at that statement. They were like, oh, you're homeschooled, but you're so normal. And I'm like, dude, what
people.
Does that
you just don't know.
People. It's like the stupid comment, and I'm sorry, this gets me heated every time. But when people are like, "Oh, you homeschool your kids? How will they socialize?" It's like, yes, because the only way to socialize people is in school. Do you know how many kids at school don't even want to be around everybody like that? They don't want to socialize. They want to be with their friends, or they want to, talk with a few people. being in school does not equal socialization. And honestly, some of the homeschool kids I know interact better with other kids and adults especially than kids who go to school.
Yes. I just want to comment. I love Spicy Sarah. I love it. It's my favorite thing. You do. You have a heart for this, and I love seeing that heart.
I'm not even gonna.
Well, and I don't think it's it's one of those things where I read the article, and so a little bit. I do have a heart and some compassion for public schools, because public schools have had this awful, horrible PR problem lately. First, the trends are all going down. Kids are learning less. They're doing worse. The teachers are not getting paid. They're quitting. There's all these school shootings. It's a terrible. They are getting dragged over the coals. You know, public schools are put through the ringer. And again, I'm a big supporter of public schools. I was public school educated, and I think I turned out really well on that. I benefited from my education. Wow. No, I don't want to say I turned out well. That was not a good. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And I think during the pandemic, when everything shut down, a lot of parents saw what their education was. And I think a lot of parents saw some of the holes and the problems and the concerns. And I'm not talking about like the crazy parents who are at the school board meetings screaming about, I can't believe you're letting my kid read this book or whatever. That's not my thing. I think they're realizing, wow, this teacher is trying to manage 30 students and my child's not getting a ton of care. And this, especially learning on a tablet, it's not going very well. And so I think a lot of parents realize, like, we could supplement or do some of this at home, which I totally support. And I think I think articles like this are the pushback, right? Because parents are starting to realize, actually, I want to be more involved in my kid's education. I'm not going to use the public school system as babysitting. I'm going to invest in my kid and make sure they're getting a well-rounded education, which is going to include some stuff at home. Yeah. And I think articles like this are like, well, no, you don't want to be a homeschooler. You don't want to be one of those weird fundamentalists because they beat their kids and they're evil.
But here's the thing, like, whether you homeschool your child or send your kid to school, like, you should be an active participant in your child's learning anyways.
And that's, I think, the ultimate message.
You literally are the person that spends the most time with your child, and you should be, because you are their parent. You are their primary teacher. You are the example. They can go to school all day and come back, and you are still the person that they're going to, especially as young children, you're the person that they're going to model, that they're going to mimic, that they're going to follow, and they listen to you. So whether you are homeschooling your child or like you sending them to school, you have a lot of responsibility as a parent to be their primary instructor. And I feel like that doesn't just happen when they're older and you help them with their math homework. It's like, it's from the beginning to the end of their education and even beyond. Like, you should be there participating in their education regardless.
Well, and I think that's the more holistic look at things that I'm really searching for. I don't think, picking a lane and saying this is the only way is really the solution. I think kids are diverse. I think kids have different learning needs. And I think parents and family situations are diverse. You've got single parent homes where it's just not a possibility for mom to be home with the kids because she's got to be working or whatever. And so, or maybe both parents are working or whatever the situation is. I just don't think the cookie cutter, like, you have to do it this way or you're a bad person, is the way to go. I think every situation deserves the nuance of what's best for our situation that we can manage with our children. And sometimes that involves homeschooling. Sometimes that involves public schools or private schools if you can afford it. Christian schools, that's great. But like I said, I was secular public school educated, right? I did not go to like a Christian school or anything. And I had a great experience. I got a really good education. Like all schools, I had good teachers and bad teachers. I had friends. I had good moments and bad moments. But that was part of my upbringing. And my parents were involved in that. Now, both my parents worked full time. So they weren't like doing all my homework with me. But they definitely were there for me when I needed them. Or they would encourage me, go talk to this teacher to get the thing you need. And I just think that, like, every family has to sit down and look at their situation and not try to fit into.
That's the thing. Like, that's the thing about this whole discussion. I feel like it takes a lot of self-awareness, knowing yourself and what your capabilities are. What is the family culture you want to create? What is the, environment you want for your family? What can you do? Okay. Are you the type of person that's good at sitting down and being able to work with your kids? Or are you able to, are you interested in like figuring out in very different learning styles of your children, or is it something that you don't think you have the capacity for?
Yeah.
Is it something that you think, oh, I could do that with one kid, maybe not the other kid, maybe this kid has more needs than I'm able to fulfill?
Yep.
It's like, it's a lot of self-awareness, but also you have to study your own children.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's too much to, try to do. And it's like, nope, I can't do that. I know that if I send them to school, they might be able to get that here. Or, I can't take on that weight. I'm too busy. I'm working, or I just don't have the time for it. So there's so many different factors, but I feel like you have to be able to sit down and be like, okay, this is the family culture. This is what we're going to do. And it's something where everybody has to be on the same page. It can't just be like well, this is what you do. You have kids and then you send them to school. And it's like, but as with anything, like you need to be able to discuss that and figure out this is the plan for us.
Yeah. And that part is what I really appreciated about that Washington Post article was this couple. They weren't sure about what their parents had done, and they wanted to do things a little differently. But it wasn't just that they, packed them on the bus and sent them to public school. They were super invested because part of it was they were so afraid. They're like, this is different, and I don't know. And they were pleasantly surprised, but they stayed involved. Mom became like she volunteered at the school and stuff, and it's like, yeah, she's able to be involved, and that's really awesome. Like, I guess that's my big thing. Like, no matter what your situation is, just be involved in your kids' education as much as you can and make conscientious choices rather than just defaulting to,
because then
this is what Democrats do or this is what Republicans do.
You get to that point where people are like, it's so hard because I feel like I know that parents are busy. I understand as a parent of 4 children, it's very busy. Like
my parents worked both full time, right? My mom ran her own business. She was incredibly busy when we were kids, but she was a big part of my love of education, right? I remember like I would get stuck on something in science or math, and my mom, she loves to learn, like just in general. She was like, but isn't this so cool? And that really shaped my perspective of the way I approach
it gives you a new perspective
math
instead
and science, because it was like,
hitting a wall.
This is really cool, and I just had this eagerness to learn. Now maybe she didn't have time to sit me down and teach me all those things, but she's like, this is actually really cool stuff. Go in early tomorrow and talk to your teacher, and so it's like my mom was still very invested in my education, even though she wasn't our teacher. And I really appreciated that. It shaped my approach to the way I learn, and I still love all that stuff. And so, I think if you want to put your kid in a public school, that's awesome. That's so cool. Be an involved parent. If you want to keep your kid at home, that's awesome too. Be an involved parent. If you put your kid in a private school or a Christian school, it's like, just be there, and also don't judge the other people's decisions as like, this is the what the good people do and this is what evil people do.
Yeah, we should never be coming from a place of judgment. I mean, like if you're talking to someone and you actually get to know them, and there's actually like a reason for you to like, oh, that's a red flag or something. Talk to them about it. Don't just instantly be like, well, you're making a bad decision because that's dumb.
Well, because so I am like them, but in reverse. I am the one who was public school educated, and I was like, you were like, we want to homeschool the kids, and I was like, boy, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that because I had all these misperceptions and I don't know. But honestly, our children have flourished with the homeschooling. I don't want to like toot your horn or whatever, but like, but you're doing a really good job, right? Our kids are amazing, and I'm so proud of them. And I think you are an awesome educator. You have that bug or whatever, and I don't think all moms have that, and that's okay. I'm not like, it doesn't make you better than other moms, but in this area, this is a strength, and I think that that's the right choice for our family in this situation. But I see this stuff where it's such a hot button issue, and people are so eager to divide camps and choose sides. And I'm like, no, just pay attention, right? And if there's evil, call it out, right? It's a good thing to say, hey, what the Duggars were doing, evil, right? Hey, what that family went through where they were hitting kids, evil, right? That's okay to call out and say this is bad. But then also like be open to the fact that doesn't label all homeschooling experiences,
Yeah.
And I thought it was an interesting article.
It's very interesting.
Fascinating topic. And I knew we would get some spicy Sarah if we could. No, I love your passion. I do.
I just have some opinions.
And I like them. I'm grateful for you. And so everybody, homeschool your kids or put them in the public school. But just love your kids and be involved. And that was such like a vanilla, medium, middle of the road nuanced take. That's all I got.
Well, we said there's nuance here. You got to be able to have room for nuance.
That is like
any discussion where there are two different sides.
I swear that's one of the biggest arguments of my entire like life and ministry is like, hey, maybe we need some nuance on this, right? The world is so quick, and this is just so beyond the homeschooling thing. It's just everything in life. People want to pick sides and be enemies with someone.
And that's the hill they're going to die on.
And it's just like, or we could listen to the other side and come to a middle ground. And
thank you for listening.
Thank you to Music Town for the use of our theme song. Check us out on Spotify or Apple, whatever, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review. Tell us how amazing we are. We won't let it go to our heads. Promise. Pinky swear. And are you ready for the mom joke of the week?
Yes.
All right. Give it to me.
Why do ducks have so many tail feathers?
I have no idea.
Cover up the butt quacks.
That's so dumb.
So dumb.